Hi everyone, and welcome to another video. As you guys have seen from the title, I'm going to be talking a little bit on selecting different types of fishing line for different applications. So there's three main types of fishing line. There's monofilament, fluorocarbon, and braid. There's also different hybrids between these three kinds that combine each other's pros and cons. So they are also viable options, but I'm not going to talk about them in this one since they're so specific to the brand and the type. So the first line that I'm going to talk about is monofilament. One of the main pros about this type of line is that it's very cheap. You can buy it in bulk and it's pretty cheap. And there's a wide range of super cheap line to decently expensive line that you can get. So there's tons of different options for monofilament. And some things that can be pro or con depending on your application is that it tends to float a little bit. It doesn't completely float, but it floats a lot more than fluorocarbon. Another one is that it stretches. So with that, you're gonna lose some power on your hook sets. However, you're gonna gain, or you're gonna not break off as much fish because that extra stretch gives it a little bit of more wiggle room. And some of the cons to monofilament is its memory. If you use spinning reels, the loops that you get from the monofilament, that's caused by having the memory. And also, monofilament is not very sensitive, so you're not going to be able to detect the bites as much as you would if you're using braid or fluorocarbon. Next up is fluorocarbon. So one of the main pros to fluorocarbon is that it's invisible in the water, so the fish are not going to see it. Even when you get your higher poundage, like 20, 25, 30 pound fluorocarbon, the fish are still not going to see it very well because it's very invisible in the water, as you can see here in my little demonstration. Another pro to fluorocarbon is its sensitivity. So that really helps you detect the bites and you'll catch more fish that way. Some of the things that can be pros or cons are that it sinks. So if you're using top water and your line's going to sink a little bit more into the water, so you're not going to get as good of action on your top water. Also, there's some stretch. It's not quite as much as monofilament, but there's still some there. So if you're making very long casts, you're still going to get stretch in your hook sets, and you're not going to get as powerful of a hook set. And some of the cons are that it is pretty expensive. There are brands that you can spend $40 on a spool of 200 yards, but there's also cheaper ones where you can get a 200-yard spool for $15 and $12. It all depends on the brand and the type. Also, the memory for fluorocarbon is high as well, just like monofilament. However, fluorocarbon is a little more stiffer than monofilament, so when you do get the line twists, they're a little harder to get out, and if you kink your line, then it's not good for the fluorocarbon. And the last type of line that I'm going to talk about is braid. So braid has a very low diameter and a very high strength, so you can fit a lot more line on your spools, and you'll be able to cast further because the diameter is very thin for a high poundage. Also, there's no memory, so if you use braid on a spinning reel, you're not going to get the line twists as much, so that's a huge bonus for that. Also, it's very sensitive, so you'll be able to detect your bites even when you're making long casts. Some things that are kind of pro, kind of con for braid is that there's no stretch. So if you're making very long casts, you'll still get a very powerful hook set because there's no stretch. Also, that no stretch can be a bad thing because if you set the hook really hard, sometimes you can break your line because there's no stretch and no give in it, so the line absorbs all the shock. And another thing that can be good about it is that it floats as well, so if you're using top water, this is a viable option as well. one of the main cons for braid is that it's a low abrasion resistance type. So if you're fishing on the bottom a lot and there's a lot of rocks down there, it's going to wear at your line and you're going to lose a lot of your strength. So sometimes your line is going to break on a hook set because of that. One way to kind of mix the pros and cons on your setups between these three lines is to have different leaders and different main lines. So on my spinning reels, I like to have a braid main line so I don't have any line twists, but have a fluorocarbon leader. So I'll still have the sensitivity, but also have the invisibility, and so I can catch more fish that way. Also, when I'm fishing with the jig or stuff, or Texas rig, stuff like that, on clear water lakes, where I want the low stretch, the high sensitivity, and the extra strength, but if the water's clear, I also don't want the fish to see it. So if I use braid, the fish are going to see it. So I like to have the braid main line with the fluorocarbon leader as well, so the fish can't see it, but I still have the low stretch and the powerful hook sets that I need in the jig and Texas rig situations. Another application for the braid main line and the fluorocarbon leader is making long casts offshore when you're fishing on the bottom. So that way you'll get the low stretch from the braid, so you still get a powerful hook set, but you'll also get the abrasion resistance from the fluorocarbon, and also as a bonus you'll get the low visibility from the fluorocarbon as well near your bait. So I hope this video was helpful to everybody watching, and I hope you can take some of these tips away and apply it to your fishing lives and maybe catch more fish that way. And make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Got a lot more content coming out later on this year, so make sure to stay tuned. Thank you.